Welcome to Season 6 of Far Reach Voyages, where we share our love of offshore sailing and adventure travel. In the last episode, I began a refit of the mast and boom after discovering some bubbling paint and light corrosion. We unstepped the mast, removed all the rigging and hardware, and I sanded and primed the spar. The episode ended as I prepared to paint it with Awlgrip. Well, this turned out pretty good. That's the second coat. See a couple of holidays. No runs or curtains. We just need to sand it, prep it for another coat tomorrow. What I want to do is to give you a dry demonstration of how we brush and tipped our spar with Awlgrip 2-part linear polyurethane paint. Awlgrip is mixed 2-to-1 base to the converter, and it has to be a brushing converter, not a spraying converter. Use the spraying converter if you're going to spray it. And then also there's a brushing thinner. And the thinner, you need to thin at least 20 to 30%. We were painting on a 7-degree day, and we found that closer to 30% thinned the paint sufficiently so that it would level well. So what we would do is take a foam brush with a wiping bar inserted through little holes in the cup, and a dry brush that you put in there. It's going to need to sit in there initially about 30 seconds to absorb the paint. Then we've been working along this direction, so we're going to apply the painting back in towards the section that we previously worked. And you can try to tip it out a little bit like this, but the key is to switch brushes with a dry brush and then just tip it directly back to what you previously painted. And what I say to myself when I'm painting this, so that I don't overbrush it, is just light as a feather, light as a feather, light as a feather. Switch it back. Take the paint that you're applying the Awlgrip with, and you're just going to work your way on down like this. Light as a feather, light as a feather. And you're just tipping it back. And if you have it thinned right, it will flow out beautifully and it won't run. If you don't get it thinned enough, it'll leave brush marks, and it will also get sags and curtains. Light as a feather. We painted both sides opposite each other. My wife had a cup and brushes on her side. I worked on this side. We worked right next to each other, ensuring we were getting an overlap underneath. And we just very quickly worked right on down the spar. That worked really well for us. Spraying Awlgrip with the Prevail sprayer. That was the second coat. The Prevail sprayer is a great tool when you need to paint smaller objects. The sprayer only costs about $10. The advantage of spraying Awlgrip over brushing is you apply all 3 coats in about 2 hours. There's also no sanding required like there is in rolling and brushing Awlgrip. I applied all 3 coats with 1 full canister and a small part of a second canister. You absolutely must wear a respirator when applying Awlgrip. These are the tough ones, these spreaders. The results are pretty good so far. See a little more coverage there. I decided to add 2-inch thick riser pads to the halyard winches to prevent the occasional overrides I'd experienced. I repurposed the large teak pads I removed from the primary winches I described in Season 6, Episode 2. After planing them down, I cut smaller diameter pads out with a friend's bandsaw. I drilled holes for the bolts and then test fit them on the winches and the winch pad mounts. Satisfied with the fit, it was time to paint them. A coat of pre-coat primer on the teak winch pads. These are the new pads I'm adding to the winch bases for the main and jib halyard. And previously I coated that with Interlux pre-coat. It's like almost like a thin wood sealer. And then the primer, and then get a couple of coats of bright side on the winch pads. These are stainless steel tristle tracks and attached to the mast. Stainless steel is stainless, not stain-proof. Eventually, most stainless steel will get some degree of surface rust staining. It can sometimes be hard to remove. I've had good luck with Magica over the years. This is 10 minutes later. Haven't even washed it off yet. You can see it looks really good. Here's the bigger one. These are reinforcing plates for the spreaders. And they get pop riveted onto the mast. The spreader bar runs through here. What I'm doing is I'm covering the insides of them with UHMW tape. Bought this from McMaster Car. You can get it in different widths and thicknesses. It's peel off, it's sticky on one side. And then I just cut it back with a razor knife. That's the original UHMW that was on there before. It's in perfect shape. For some reason, the uppers didn't have it on there, so I'm putting it on there. I must have just forgot when I put the mast together, I don't know. But anyway, putting them on there now. Works pretty good, and I use it on lots of different fittings. These are aluminum, so it's not going to cause any galvanic corrosion with the spar. But I like to do it just for added protection. But it's particularly good on stainless, and anything that's stainless that's on the aluminum spars or aluminum anything, I always put this UHMW tape between them as a barrier. Works pretty good. And I'll just finish these holes out and it'll be ready to go. The snap shackles that were on the halyards were rusty. Just get that surface rust on them, you see it a lot of times. This is a Nicopress, or a Nicro, I guess, not Nicopress, but Nicro shackle. Here's a Schaefer one that had a lot of surface rust on it. And what I do is I just soak them in a bath of Citrus 77. I use this for all kinds of things, fasteners and anything that's stainless that shows any sign of rust on it. I just soak them in there and usually it just comes right off. But just another tool that you can use to maintain your boat. Teff gel on here to help eliminate galvanic corrosion between the stainless rivets and the aluminum mast. Doesn't take a lot. forgot to include video of actually running the messenger lines through the mast before I put the masthead fitting on. So this is what I used. This is a section of PVC pipe put together. I glued it with PVC glue, and then I had a coupling that fit perfectly around this foiling section. This is an old foil section that fits together. It's very stiff. So I put the messenger line, I taped it on the end down here. And I ran the messenger line out along the length, and then I slid this long pole inside the mast from the top to the bottom, pushing the messenger line in. And then when I got down to the exit box holes on the mast, I used a coat hanger to grab the line and tear it off of that painter's tape and pull it out through the exit box. And then I just pulled the pole out, and I had the messenger line in place. And then I just did each of the 4 halyards very carefully, and I rotated the mast as I went so that the pole was always laying on the bottom side of the mast. And I pulled the messenger lines, the previous messenger lines I put in tight, so when I rolled the mast over, they would be held up, and I wouldn't cross any messenger lines one over the other. And that worked really well for me, and it didn't take that long. So I just share that. That's how I ran the messenger lines through the mast. Once I have the messenger lines in place, then it was just a matter of using them to pull the halyards through. So if I do this right, this should be the main halyard. This is coming out of the mast. Going down the back. Mast external. This would be the topping lift. Bowling in the messenger line with an overhand knot. It's the way I learned to do it for mountaineering. Keeps the tail from slipping through. A little more secure. There's lots of different ways to do it, and I've done it lots of different ways, but this is the way I'm doing it today. Line to go through the sheave without any Let's take one here and then we'll go on this side of the whipping just in case anything goes wrong. Nothing too strong ever broke. And that's probably all you gotta do. But what I do is I'll just tie a little overhand knot in the end of this. And then wrap some tape. And the way you set this line up is you just flake it out in a figure 8. So that it doesn't tangle. Let's see how we do. That is all there is to it. We have most of the mast put together. Still need the winch pad here, spinnaker track, these exit box plates. Most of the hardware in here. Ordered some extra pop rivets. I'm a little short on pop rivets. Still got to put my steaming light on. Pole topping lift. This is the staysail halyard. Ran all the halyards today except for one, the topping lift, because I'm going to rebuild it. I need to bring these two plates. Cover these shiv pins. That's about it. We're getting there. In the next episode, the mast refit continues. We'll cover a lot of ground, but some useful highlights might be a discussion on the different kinds of taps I most often use, how to build aluminum backing plates and install them inside an aluminum spar, and I'll perform maintenance on turnbuckles. We're going to also take an interesting dive inside the spar with an inexpensive endoscope you might find useful to have on your boat. See you in the next episode. If you enjoyed this episode of Far Reach Voyages, let us know in the comments. Also, consider liking and subscribing, as it tells us you'd like to see more videos and it helps the channel grow. See you in the next episode.